Jude walked closer to Tola. Too close. Then he said the words that changed everything. "Give me a son, or you lose everything and walk out of this family with nothing." For a moment, time stopped. Because this wasn't just any woman. She was his brother's wife.
Then Tola gave him a hard, dirty slap. So fast and unexpected. Jude never saw it coming.
Tola's hand landed hard across his face. The sound echoed through the room. But instead of fear, Jude smiled. A slow, wicked smile. And in that moment, the battle line was drawn. He had no idea he had just underestimated the wrong woman. This is African Folktales with Nsinem. This story has a special place in my heart, and someday I might tell you why. Before all this drama, Tola was a lover girl. Ken and Tola had met in secondary school. In fact, they were seatmates. Tola found Ken's jokes to be very hilarious, while Ken thought Tola was finer than Barbie. Tola was an orphan, raised in an orphanage, living off donations and government aid, while Ken was from the humblest of backgrounds, the kind of background that would make a church mouse shake its head in pity. While Tola went to the university under the sponsorship of the orphanage, Ken had to toil to pay his way through school. He was a carpenter, a bricklayer, an electrician, a painter. His motto was, "If you want anything done, call me first before you conclude I can't do it." Right after the two lovebirds graduated from the university, Ken proposed.
Tola's friends were not in support of the union. They had nothing against Ken, but they felt Tola could do better. "You are a beautiful girl. Why waste all this beauty on a man that cannot even offer you 2 square meals? Not talk of 3. Lily, one of her friends, said. Another one said, "We have nothing against Ken. He is a nice guy and he loves you. But what is the economic value that marrying that man will add to your life? You have wealthy men coming for your hand in marriage. Pick one." Ino, her friend, begged. But Tola was adamant. It was either Ken or no one else. But very, very soon, the Pabi of the story was going to wish she had risen in love and not fallen, because flat she fell. Their wedding was so small and simple. It was attended by Ken's immediate family and one of Ken's friends, and Lily, Tola's friend. One thing was clear: they were in love. The thing that wasn't clear to them yet was the disaster waiting, patiently, the type that would test the strength of their love. After the wedding, life quickly went back to normal. They both worked in his school as teachers and were counting their blessings daily when Ken brought home a life-changing opportunity. Ken was made aware of a link to go to London to work as a caregiver for a period of 3 years. The pay was okay, but with the exchange rate in the country, the payment was going to translate to something meaningful in Naira. Not only that, there was opportunity to do other jobs on his time off. All they needed was money for his travel expenses. Ken believed her husband, and together they both labored, borrowed, and tried to raise the money, but they couldn't. Ken spoke to his mother and elder brother that they should sell their late father's only land or use it as a collateral for a loan. He was going to buy it back or redeem the land back in 3 years.
But his mother and elder brother wouldn't hear of it. With just a few weeks left, Tola spoke to her friend Lily, who was married to an older businessman. Lily borrowed the money to Tola, and Ken was able to travel. I'm sure you are wondering what could have gone wrong. Hold on, just hold on. 3 years flew by, and Ken came back. He had worked himself to the bones, and it paid off. He was a millionaire. Without wasting time, they invested in businesses that were profitable. Luck smiled on them, and their investments brought in more investments. They built a house in Lagos and one in the village. Childbearing, they had put on hold because of their finances, was resumed. And Tola added a beautiful daughter to their family. Their joy knew no bounds. Until one Friday morning. Tola had just breastfed her baby and was settling in for a nap when her friend called her, asking to know her location. If Tola had known what the news would be, she would have ran far away. she would have blocked her ears and not heard such a life-changing, devastating news. Can you guess what the news could be? Drop your guess in the comment section. Lily came over and sat close to her friend and told her that she had heard from the news that her husband was in a plane crash. Tola laughed so hard. She looked over at the wall clock. From the time her husband had gotten off his flight, she picked up her phone, expecting to see a missed call from her husband, which was his habit of calling her to keep her abreast of all his movements. Ken would call before getting on a flight and after his flight. He called before major meetings and after to brief her on what was decided.
Tola couldn't shake the feeling that her friend's expensive joke could be true. She called his number, but it wasn't connecting. It was only supposed to be a short flight from Abuja to Lagos, Tola said with tears in her eyes, her voice breaking. She immediately went through her call log. There was hundreds of missed calls. People had already heard of the news before she did. It was on social media. Her little baby girl, who was exclusively breastfed, no formula and water, had to be put on formula because Tola could not function. She couldn't eat, sleep, or even hold a conversation. All Tola did was cry. Lily had to take Tola and the baby to her house so she could watch after both of them. Months after the shock wore off, his memorial service was fixed. And that was when life took an even darker turn. The journey to the village felt longer than usual. Tola sat silently in the back seat with her baby strapped carefully to her chest while Lily sucked beside her. The driver kept glancing at her through the mirror, pity written all over his face. Nobody spoke much. What was there to say? The closer they got to the village, the heavier Tola's chest became. Every corner of that road carried a memory of Ken. There used to be a mango tree here, Ken had once told her proudly during one of their trips to the village. I fell from that tree when I was 10 years old. My mother beat me instead of crying. Tola almost smiled at the memory, but the smile died before it could fully form. The village people had already heard she was coming. As their car drove into the compound, women gathered in clusters, whispering to themselves. Men stood on their trees, shaking their heads in sympathy. Some people rushed toward the car. Immediately she stepped out. "Ndo, take heart. God knows best." Those words had become like stones being thrown at her chest. Take heart. How was she supposed to take heart when her own heart had entered the grave with her husband?
Tola adjusted the baby on her shoulder and slowly looked up at the beautiful bungalow Ken had built. The cream-colored house stood proudly in the middle of the compound. Ken had supervised every block, every tile, every window. He used to joke that even if rain fell upside down, that house would still stand. Now looking at it without him felt wrong, empty, cold. Before she could even move toward the entrance, the front door opened and her mother-in-law stepped out. Mama Ken was wearing a rich lace wrapper and gold jewelry Tola had never seen before. Behind her came Jude, Ken's elder brother, pressing his phone carelessly like a man without a worry in the world. Tola frowned slightly. Something immediately felt strange. "Mama," she greeted weakly. The older woman barely hugged her. Her eyes were dry, too dry for a woman whose son had supposedly died barely months ago. "You have come," Mama Ken said flatly. "Not my daughter, not sorry for your pain, just you have come." Tola swallowed hard. The baby suddenly began to cry, and Lily quickly carried her, while Tola bent slightly to greet Jude. "How was your journey?" he asked casually. Casually, as though she had come for a wedding celebration instead of her husband's memorial. As Tola stepped into the compound, she noticed immediately that things had changed. New curtains hung in the sitting room. Different flower vases stood in corners she had personally decorated with Ken. Even the family portraits she and Ken had taken during their housewarming had disappeared from the walls. Her heart skipped painfully. "Mama, people are staying here?" Tola asked softly. "We moved in after Ken died," Mama Ken replied without emotion. "This house is too big to leave empty." Tola nodded slowly. trying to understand. At least that part sounded reasonable. Then the older woman continued. You and your friend will use the guest room downstairs. Tola blinked. The guest room. Yes, Jude answered quickly before his mother could speak again. The other rooms upstairs are locked. For a second, Tola thought she heard wrongly. Locked? This was her house. The house she and Ken planned together. The house they furnished together. She chose the kitchen cabinets herself. Ken spent 3 nights arguing with artisans because Tola wanted imported tiles instead of local ones. And now she was being told rooms inside her own house were inaccessible to her? Tola forced a smile. Mama, our room is upstairs. Mama Ken adjusted her wrapper. I know. The woman said it so calmly that the words hurt even more. My room is there too, Jude added carelessly. Mama cannot be climbing stairs all the time, so she took the master's bedroom downstairs. Tola's chest tightened immediately. The master's bedroom, her matrimonial room.
The room where Ken carried her into on the night they moved into the house. The room where they stayed awake till morning discussing baby names. The room where Ken knelt one evening promising her that poverty would never shame them again. Occupied. Not preserved. Not respected. Occupied. And Jude had taken another room upstairs too, leaving her, the wife of the man who built the house, in the guest room. Tola stared at them speechlessly. Lily noticed the pain immediately. Mama, I'm sure Tola can still use her room. Use which room? Mama Ken cut in sharply. My son is dead. The compound suddenly became silent. Even the villagers outside, pretending not to listen, became still. My son is dead, the woman repeated. And this family must move on. Ken would want that. Tola felt something crack quietly inside her chest. Not because of the room, but because of how quickly they had erased her place in the house. Like Ken died, and her own identity died with him.
She looked upstairs slowly. Her eyes filled with tears as memories flooded her mind. Ken laughing on the balcony. Ken carrying paint buckets during construction. Ken calling her Madam Landlady jokingly after they moved in. Now she stood inside that same house like a visitor waiting to be accommodated. The baby started crying again, and Tola quickly carried her from Lily. Her hands trembled badly. Mama Ken turned toward one of the house helps. Take their bags to the guest room. The house help obeyed immediately. Tola watched helplessly as her belongings were carried away. Not upstairs to her room, not to the master bedroom she shared with her husband, but to a guest room, a room meant for temporary visitors. That was when the reality truly entered her bones. Ken was gone, and the people he left behind had already started treating her like she no longer belonged.
Then some women called her and told her that she had to scrape her hair. Every strand had to go. It wasn't a suggestion, it was a command. Tola couldn't say no. She wasn't given a choice. She was told to sit on the floor as they used razors, not clippers, and after a few hours, her hair was all gone. The memorial service ended just before sunset. The compound that had been filled with mourners all day slowly began to empty. Plastic chairs were stacked noisily in one corner, while women carried coolers and dirty plates toward the backyard. Groups of men stood on the trees discussing the plane crash, as though repeating the story over and over again would somehow make it easier to understand. Tola sat quietly in one corner of the sitting room, her daughter asleep on her chest. Her eyes were swollen from crying. She had barely spoken the entire day. Every condolence felt empty now. Every sorry sounded rehearsed. Ken was still gone. Nothing would change that. Lily sat beside her protectively, occasionally rubbing her shoulder gently whenever she noticed Tola drifting too deeply into her thoughts. Then Jude entered the sitting room. Tola, he called flatly. The elders are waiting. Tola looked up slowly. The elders? Yes, in the Obi. Her stomach tightened immediately. Village meetings were never casual things, especially not after a burial or memorial. Slowly she stood up and adjusted the sleeping baby carefully against her chest. Lily immediately rose to follow her,
but Jude blocked her path instantly. This is a family meeting. Lily frowned. She's not in a good emotional state. And we are all emotional, Jude replied coldly.
But tradition must be followed. Tola touched Lily's hand gently. It's okay, but it wasn't okay. Not even close. The meeting was held in the old family obi beside the compound. The air inside smelled of old wood, palm wine, and dust. Elderly men sat in a semicircle, their walking sticks resting beside them. Some stared at Tola with pity, others with cold indifference. Mama Ken sat near the front, her face hard like stone. Jude stood beside her proudly, like a man already certain of victory. Tola greeted respectfully, before sitting quietly on the mat they pointed at. Her daughter stirred slightly in her arms before falling asleep again. For a while nobody spoke. The silence itself felt heavy, deliberate, like they wanted her to feel small before the conversation even began. Finally, the oldest man cleared his throat. "My daughter," he began slowly, "what happened to Ken is painful for all of us." Tola nodded weakly. "He was a good son," another elder added, "a very hard-working young man." Tola felt tears burn her eyes again. Yes, he was. The first elder continued, "But life must continue, and now that he is gone, certain matters must be addressed quickly before confusion enters the family." Tola frowned slightly, confused. "What matters, sir?" she asked softly. The old man exchanged glances with the others before speaking again. "We need all documents concerning Ken's properties and businesses." Tola blinked repeatedly. I don't understand."
Mama Ken spoke this time. "The house documents, bank papers, land documents, business documents, everything." Tola stared at them in disbelief. "What for?" Jude answered immediately. "For the family, of course." A strange coldness spread through Tola's body. "The family," she repeated slowly. One of the elders leaned forward. "You are still a young woman. Nobody knows tomorrow. You can remarry and leave this family completely, so Ken's properties cannot remain in your hands." For a second, Tola honestly thought she misheard him. Her lips parted slowly. "What?" Mama Ken clicked her tongue impatiently. "Must we explain everything? You are a woman." The words landed heavily. "You did not even give my son a male child before he died," the older woman continued mercilessly. "Only one girl." Tola felt her heart stop briefly. Her daughter, her innocent little baby, sleeping peacefully against her chest, was being spoken about like a disappointment. Tola tightened her hold around the child instinctively. One of the elders sighed deeply, like a man trying to sound reasonable. "Nobody is saying we will throw you away, but according to tradition, a woman does not inherit her husband's property." Tola's eyes filled immediately. "But I built those things with Ken," she whispered painfully. "We suffered together. We struggled together." Jude scoffed loudly. "And whose name are the properties under?" The question silenced her immediately.
Because the truth was, most of the properties were indeed under Ken's name. Not because she was foolish, but because she trusted him completely. Mama Ken leaned back proudly. "Bring every document you have, every paper, every account detail. We will inspect them properly." Tola shook her head slowly, unable to process what was happening. Her husband had not even been dead for long. His clothes still smelled like him. His daughter still searched for his face unconsciously. And already these people were dividing his life like market traders sharing meat. Tears rolled silently down her cheeks. "I am your son's wife," she said weakly. Mama Ken's expression hardened instantly. "My son is dead." That sentence again, cold, sharp, final. And tradition is tradition. The room suddenly felt too small for Tola to breathe properly. One elder cleared his throat again. "There are still other rights that must be discussed." Tola looked at him fearfully. "What rights?" "We will meet again in 3 days," he answered calmly. "Then the family will decide the next steps." Nobody explained further. Nobody even tried to comfort her. The meeting was dismissed, just like that. Tola stood slowly on weak legs, carrying her sleeping baby tightly against her chest. As she stepped outside into the darkening evening, the cool village wind hit her face softly, but it brought no comfort. For the first time since Ken's death, true fear entered her heart, because she suddenly realized something terrifying. The plane crash may not have been the worst thing that happened to her.
What came after it might destroy her completely. If you're enjoying this story, do give me a thumbs up. Subscribe to this channel if you haven't. I share intriguing African tales that are sure to keep you at the edge of your seat. Share this story with a friend or two that you feel would love it. Back to the story. The night before the second meeting felt unusually heavy. The entire compound was quiet, except for the distant sound of crickets and the occasional barking of dogs from neighboring compounds. Power had gone out hours ago, leaving the house under the dull glow of rechargeable lamps. Tola sat on the bed in the guest room, gently patting her daughter to sleep. The child had been unusually restless all evening, almost as though she could feel the tension hanging over her mother. Lily sat at the small dressing table, scrolling absent-mindedly through her phone, but every few seconds she glanced at Tola with concern. Neither of them had truly recovered from the humiliation of the first meeting. The demand for documents, the insults about not having a son, the coldness from Mama Ken, it all sat heavily inside Tola's chest like stones. Finally, after the baby slept, Tola stood up slowly. "Let me get water from the kitchen," she whispered. Lily nodded. "Don't stay too long." The corridor outside was dimly lit. The house that once brought Tola peace now felt unfamiliar. Every step echoed strangely. As she passed the staircase leading upstairs, memories flooded her mind painfully. Ken laughing while carrying furniture. Ken teasing her for always forgetting her slippers downstairs. Ken pulling her close whenever she got angry over small things. Tola swallowed hard and continued walking. Just as she reached the sitting room, a voice stopped her. "Tola!" She turned immediately. Jude was sitting alone in the darkness near the dining area, a half-empty bottle of beer on the table in front of him. The smell of alcohol hung heavily around him. Tola frowned slightly. "You haven't slept?" He stood up slowly. "Come, I need to talk to you." Something about his tone made her uncomfortable instantly. "I'm tired," she replied quietly. "We can talk tomorrow after the meeting." "No," Jude said firmly. "It has to be now." Reluctantly, Tola stopped walking. Jude moved closer. Too close. Tola instinctively stepped back. Then he spoke. "You are still a young woman," he said slowly, "and a very beautiful one too." Tola's stomach tightened immediately. She stared at him in confusion. What kind of talk is this? Jude smiled faintly, but there was nothing kind in the smile. "I'm trying to help you." "Help me?" "Yes." He lowered his voice. "Tomorrow's meeting will not favor you." Tola crossed her arms defensively. "What are you talking about?" "You heard the elders. You have no son. And according to tradition, everything belongs to the family." Tola felt anger rise inside her immediately. Ken's daughter is his child too. Jude shrugged carelessly. That's not how these people see it.
Silence fell briefly between them before he finally said the words that made Tola's blood run cold. "But there is still a way for you to keep access to the properties." Tola frowned. "What way?" Jude stepped even closer. "You can become my wife." For a second, Tola genuinely thought she had heard wrongly. "What?" she whispered. Jude's eyes moved shamelessly over her face. "Sleep with me. Give this family a son.
then nobody will touch the properties. The world around Tola seemed to freeze. She stared at him in complete disbelief. This was her husband's brother, the same man who stood beside her during the memorial, pretending to mourn with her, the same man calling elders and discussing tradition. And now he was standing in the darkness, asking her to replace her dead husband in his bed. Tola's chest rose sharply with rage. Jude continued talking, like what he was saying was perfectly normal. Women do it all the time. You think widows survive in this village without making sacrifices? Before the words even landed properly, Tola's hand moved instinctively. Smack! She gave him a hard slap. The sound echoed loudly through the sitting room. Jude staggered back, slightly in shock, holding his cheek. Tola's entire body trembled violently. "You are disgusting!" she hissed. "Shameless animal!" Jude's face darkened instantly. "Lower your voice!" "How dare you!" Tola shouted, tears already filling her eyes. "How dare you insult Ken like this?"
Jude grabbed her wrist angrily. "You think anybody will believe you?" Tola yanked herself free immediately. "Don't touch me!" Without waiting another second, she stormed away from him and hurried toward Mama Ken's room. Her heart pounded wildly inside her chest as tears blurred her vision. She reached the door and knocked desperately. "Mama! Mama, please open the door!" No response. She knocked harder. "Mama!" Still nothing. Tola could hear movement faintly inside the room. She knew the older woman was awake, but she refused to answer. The realization hit Tola slowly and painfully. Either Mama Ken did not care, or worse, she already knew. Tola stepped back from the door slowly, her hands shaking uncontrollably. For the first time since arriving at the village, real terror settled inside her chest. This was no longer about property. Something far darker was happening around her. Tola returned to the guest room in tears. The moment Lily saw her face, she jumped up immediately. What happened? Tola broke down completely. Between sobs and trembling breaths, she told Lily every Jude had said, every disgusting word, every threat. Lily's face turned pale with anger. "What?" "I slapped him," Tola cried. "I slapped him and ran out." Lily immediately stood up. "We are leaving tonight." Tola shook her head instantly. "No." "Tola, listen to yourself. These people are dangerous." "No," Tola repeated more firmly, despite the tears running down her face. "I'm not running." Lily stared at her helplessly. Tola looked toward her sleeping daughter.
"This is my child's home too," she whispered painfully. "This is her father's house, her root. I won't let them chase us away like we never existed." Her voice broke completely. "I already lost my husband." She wiped her tears slowly. "I will not lose everything else too." Tola has chosen to stay and fight for her daughter's legacy, but she is trapped in a house where the doors are locked against her. Do you think Tola is being brave, or is she being foolish by staying in a house with a man like Jude? Let me know in the comments if you think she should have listened to Lily and ran. Tola did not sleep that night. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Jude's face in the darkness. She heard his voice again. "Sleep with me. Give this family a son." By morning, her head ached badly from crying silently through the night. Lily had barely slept too. The atmosphere inside the guest room felt suffocating. Very early that morning, Tola carried her daughter and went upstairs to see her mother-in-law. She needed answers. She needed to believe at least one person in that house still had a conscience. Mama Ken was seated on the balcony drinking tea when Tola arrived. The older woman looked up briefly before looking away again, like she already knew why Tola had come. Tola stood there quietly for a moment, gathering strength.
"Mama," she finally said softly, "I need to talk to you." Mama Ken took another sip of tea without inviting her to sit. "Talk." Tola swallowed hard. "What Jude said to me last night." The older woman did not even look surprised. Tola's heart sank immediately. "Mama, did you hear me?" "Yes," Mama Ken answered calmly. "I heard you knocking on my door." Tola stared at her in disbelief. "Then why didn't you open the door?" Mama Ken finally looked at her directly. "Because there was nothing to discuss." Those words hit Tola harder than she expected. "Nothing to discuss?
Mama, your son asked me to sleep with him, Tola cried. Your son asked me to have children for him. Mama Ken sighed impatiently, like someone tired of explaining simple things to a stubborn child. And what is wrong with that? Tola froze completely. For a moment, she honestly wondered if she had stopped hearing properly. What? She whispered weakly. Mama Ken set her cup down calmly. You are making it sound like he asked you to commit murder. Tola's mouth fell open slowly. That is your husband's brother, the older woman continued. If he gives you a son, the family line continues and your position in this house becomes secure. Tola felt sick instantly. Mama, her voice trembled badly. Do you hear yourself?
The older woman folded her arms. Nobody said you must marry him. Tola stared at her blankly. You can simply give birth to a son for him. The words entered Tola's ears slowly, like poison. She looked at this woman, the same woman she once bought wrappers for in Lagos, the same woman she defended whenever people called her difficult, the same woman she sent money to every month without complaints because Ken loved his mother deeply. And now this same woman sat comfortably asking how to carry another son for her dead husband's brother. Tola shook her head repeatedly in disbelief. Tears gathered in her eyes again. So your people want me to sleep with two brothers? She asked painfully. Doesn't that sound insane to you? Mama Ken's face hardened immediately. Mind how you speak to me. No, Mama, answer me, Tola cried. I was married to Ken. I loved Ken. How can you expect me to suddenly start carrying children for his brother like I'm some inheritance property? The older woman stood up immediately, offended. You are becoming disrespectful. Tola laughed bitterly through tears. Disrespectful? Is this not madness? Mama Ken adjusted her wrapper angrily. You educated girls think you know too much. Tradition existed before you were born. And with that, she simply walked away. Just like that, leaving Tola standing there shattered. The meeting was held later that afternoon. Again, it took place inside the Obi, but this time the atmosphere felt even colder, more hostile. Only men were present, old men, young men, family heads, uncles, distant relatives. Not a single woman sat among them. Tola entered slowly with her daughter in her arms, while Lily waited outside since she was not considered family. Mama Ken sat quietly in one corner with her face expressionless. Jude sat confidently beside the elders, like a man who already knew the outcome of the meeting before it even began. Tola greeted respectfully before sitting down. Her palms were sweating badly. The oldest elder cleared his throat first. We have discussed as a family, he began, and we have reached a decision. Tola's chest tightened immediately. All documents concerning Ken's businesses, lands, houses, and accounts will be handed over to his elder brother Jude for proper management. Tola looked up immediately. What? One elder raised his hand sharply for silence. As the first son now representing his late brother, Jude will oversee all properties belonging to this family. Tola's breathing became uneven. But those businesses belong to me too, she whispered. Ken and I built them together. Nobody answered her directly. Another elder leaned forward. You are a woman, and according to our customs, property remains within the bloodline of the men.
Tola looked around desperately, hoping at least one person would defend her. Nobody did, not even Mama Ken. Instead, another man spoke. Now you must choose. Tola frowned weakly. Choose what? You must decide whether you want to remain in this family or leave. The words hit her heavily. If you choose to leave, the elder continued, you will return to wherever you came from with your daughter. Tola tightened her hold on her child immediately. And if I stay? She asked slowly. The room became quieter. One elderly man answered calmly, like he was discussing ordinary weather. If you stay, then tradition must be followed. Tola's stomach turned. You will marry a man from this family. Her eyes widened instantly. It can be Jude, another elder added casually, or any other man in the family. Tola stared at them in horror. Any man? Yes, the elder replied. Young or old, married or unmarried. That is how widows remain under family protection. Protection. That was the word they used for imprisonment.
Tola felt tears burning her eyes again. Her husband had not even stayed long enough in the grave, and already men were sitting around discussing which one of them would inherit her like farmland. "And if I refuse?" she asked weakly. The elders exchanged glances. "Then you leave the family completely."
Silence swallowed the room. Tola looked down at her little daughter sleeping peacefully against her chest, innocent, unaware. Then she looked back at the men seated before her. Men who had already divided her husband's life. Men who now wanted to divide her body too. The oldest elder spoke again. "You must decide now." A big shout out goes to Sarah watching from America. Leave me a comment with your name and where you're watching me from. I would love to give you a shout out in my next video. Back to this story. Tola stood up slowly in the obi, her hands trembling, but her voice steady in a way she did not even recognize. "I will not marry anyone from this family," she said clearly. "I am still mourning my husband." A ripple moved through the room. Some of the elders shifted uncomfortably, others frowned. Jude's jaw tightened. Mama Ken's face remained unreadable. One of the elders leaned forward. "Then you understand the consequences." Tola nodded slowly. "I understand." The silence that followed felt heavy, like the air itself was waiting for something to break. Then the elder spoke again. "You will be given 1 month. Within that time, you will either choose a man from this family and remain under our protection, or you will leave this place with your child." But she did not beg. She only held her daughter closer. "I will not marry anyone," she repeated quietly. The meeting ended like that. No comfort, no reconciliation. Just an ultimatum hanging in the air like a blade. Lily and Tola left the village 2 days later. The journey back to Lagos was silent, both women carrying a weight words could not explain. For a while, life in Lagos felt like an attempt to breathe again. Tola resumed small routines for her daughter's sake. Feeding, changing diapers, sitting quietly in the evenings staring at nothing. Lily stayed with her more often than not, afraid to leave her alone with her thoughts. Then the month ended. Exactly 30 days later, at about mid-morning, a convoy of vehicles pulled into Tola's estate. Jude was in the first car. Mama Ken sat beside him. Behind them were a group of village youths and 2 stern-looking men who clearly came for intimidation more than conversation. They did not knock politely. They banged on the gate.
When the house help opened, Jude walked straight in like he still owned the ground he stepped on. "Tola," he called loudly, "time is up." Tola walked out calmly from inside the house, her daughter strapped to her chest. Her face was calm in a way that unsettled everyone present. Jude smacked. "We are not here to argue. Pack your things. You have 1 hour to leave this house." The village youths murmured behind him, some already assuming victory. Mama Ken stood with her chin raised proudly. Tola did not respond immediately. She simply looked at them. Then she turned and walked back inside. Jude scoffed. "You think we are joking?" Mama Ken added coldly. "She is stubborn like her father's side." But Tola did not rush. She went straight to the dining table, picked up her phone and made a call. That was all she did. No shouting, no begging, no drama, just a call. Within 30 minutes, the atmosphere changed. 2 police vans entered the compound, alongside Lily in her own car. Officers stepped out immediately, assessing the situation with firm authority. "Who are the people disturbing this residence?" one of them asked. Jude stepped forward confidently. "Officer, this is family property. She is refusing to leave." Before he could continue, another vehicle pulled in. A man in a black suit stepped out carrying a briefcase. "Good morning," he said calmly. "I am Barrister Adeyemi, representing the estate of the late Mr. Kenneth." The entire compound went silent. He opened his file. By legal documentation and probate approval,
All assets belonging to the late Kenneth are held in a trust account jointly in the name of his wife, Mrs. Tola, and their daughter. Jude frowned immediately. What nonsense is that? The lawyer continued without hesitation. This includes all properties acquired during his lifetime, including the Lagos residence and the village property. Mama Ken's expression changed for the first time. That is impossible, she muttered. The barrister adjusted his glasses. It is legally binding, signed and registered before his passing. Your late son ensured full protection for his wife and child. A heavy silence fell. Tola finally spoke softly. Ken planned everything. Her voice cracked slightly, but she held herself together. The barrister turned to Jude and Mama Ken. You have no legal right to evict her. In fact, your presence here without consent is considered trespassing. The police officer stepped forward immediately. You people should calm down. You are now trespassing on private property. Jude's confidence collapsed instantly. Mama Ken looked lost for the first time, her lips trembling slightly as reality settled in. But Tola surprised everyone when she raised her hand. Wait. All eyes turned to her.
She looked at Jude and his mother for a long moment. The same people who had humiliated her. The same people who had reduced her to nothing. Then she spoke calmly. I will return the village property to you. Gasps followed immediately. Lily turned sharply toward her. Tola! But Tola raised her hand slightly to silence her. I don't want war, she continued quietly. I just want peace for my daughter. She turned to the barrister. Please, handle the transfer of the village house back to them. The lawyer nodded slowly. Jude looked confused, almost insulted. You are giving it back? Tola nodded. I don't need it. Mama Ken said nothing. For once, her pride had no words left. Within minutes, police officers escorted Jude, Mama Ken, and the village youths out of the compound. There was no shouting now, no threats, only silence and shame. As Tola watched them leave, her mind drifted back to the night Locke smiled on her again. A few days after she returned from the village, she had been sitting alone in Ken's study, trying to reply some of his unanswered messages from the desktop computer. The desktop was synced with his phone and laptop, so new emails entered almost immediately. That was when she saw it. An email from a barrister. At first, she almost ignored it until she noticed Ken's full name and the words trust documentation. Confused, Tola replied the email. A few days later, the barrister visited quietly, and that was when she discovered the truth. Long before his death, Ken had created a trust for her and their daughter. Every property, every business, every investment protected. Tears filled Tola's eyes as the memory replayed in her mind. Even from the grave, Ken had still found a way to protect her. When the gate finally closed behind them, the house became still. Lily exhaled deeply. You didn't have to give them the village house. Tola looked down at her daughter and smiled faintly through tired eyes. I did not do it for them, she said softly. I did it so I don't become like them. She sat down slowly, pulling her baby closer. Do you think Ken did the right thing by leaving everything to Tola and his daughter? Or should his mother and brother have had a share too? And was Tola right to return the village house? I really want to hear your thoughts in the comments. Outside, the world had tried to take everything from her. Her dignity, her home,
a place in a family. But inside that house, for the first time in a long time, Tola understood something clearly. Ken did not just leave her property, he left her protection. And in choosing peace over revenge, she had finally chosen herself too. Sometimes, people will test your silence, your pain, and your limits. But dignity is not in fighting every battle. It is in knowing when to stand firm and when to walk away from toxicity with your head still held high. True love is not only in how deeply you care, but in how carefully you protect the ones you love, even when you are no longer there. Ken's wisdom was not in building wealth, but in building a shield for his wife and child that outlived him. If you enjoyed this story, then I'm sure you'll enjoy this story on your screen right now. Click to watch and I'll see you there.